Hey, how's it going? It's Lee Halliday, and what we're going to do today is learn how to build our own controls to control this video, doing it all in React and XState, the finite state machine tool for JavaScript. In this video right now, I'm showing the controls that sort of come by default, which allow me to play it, pause it, and see how much time has elapsed and the duration and whatnot. We're going to be hiding this and doing it all ourselves below. To get started, we'll go over to the XState visualizer and we'll start to build our state machine and define all of the states we're going to cater for this video player. So we'll start by defining a variable called the video machine, and it will be a new instance of the machine. We'll give it an ID like we always have to do in XState so that it sort of has a label to it. So we'll just give it the same thing, video machine. And now we need to define our initial state and all of the states that this state machine can have. So we'll actually start by listing out all the states, and this is going to be sort of interesting because we're actually going to have nested states. So our top level states will be loading. That will be the initial one actually. So as soon as we spin up this machine, it will go into a loading state. And then from loading, it can either go to ready if it was a success, or it can go to failure if it didn't work out. So failure will be a final state because in our case, there's no saving that. That's sort of, if we get to there, we're done. So if we update the visual tool, we can see that we've got initial one of loading, and then it can go to ready or failure. So let's define our nested states within ready. So the states we'll have are paused, playing, and ended, like that. So now we can see these three states that are sort of all children of the ready state. And just as in our top level state machine, we can give ready state an initial state as well. So the initial state here will be paused. So sort of as it enters the ready state, it will go to paused. Now we've defined our states, but how do we get from one state to another? And we do that by defining events to listen to on each state level. So what are we going to listen to on the loading state? We will listen to two, and the first one will be loaded. So that will be like this. And so when the loaded event happens, what are we going to do? We are going to go into the ready state. And the next one will be fail. And if that happens, we are going to go into the failure state. So if we update that, we can now see that we start at loading. If the loaded event happens, we go into the pause state, meaning we're basically ready for the user to click play and play this video. So if we now look at the different states here, we'll define what events they're listening to so they can transition to different things. So paused, what is it going to listen to? So paused will listen for play, and when play happens, we will go to playing. So now we can see how we go from paused to playing. Playing will listen for pause to basically switch it back to paused. So now we can see how we go from playing back to paused. From here, we can also go to end. Basically, if we're playing and we reach the end of the video, we'll trigger it to go into the ended state. So now we can see how we go down here. And ended, when that happens, we have the ability to play it again. So we will listen for the play event, which will send it back up to playing. Cool. So I think through this, it looks a little bit crazy, but if we use this tool here, we're loading, it's loaded. So now we've got the video in a pause state. If we send it the play event, it will go into playing. And at this point, we can either pause it, which sends it back up here, or we can end it, which takes us down here, at which point we can send it the play event and it will be playing again. So I think we've handled most of the different states and events. So now let's talk about context. So context are sort of all of the quantitative properties that don't fit in one of these finite states. Finite states, and how it gets its name finite state machine, are a predefined list of states that it can be in. So we've got loading, ready, failure, and then we've got some substates here, paused, playing, and ended. But there's other information we need to sort of build a complete experience. And because we're doing React and we're dealing with HTML, we need a reference to the actual HTML5 video element. So we'll put that in our context. It will start out as null. And then we're also going to keep track of the duration of the video, which will begin at 0, and how much time has elapsed, which will also default it to 0. So these are 3 different context properties that we're going to keep track of in this. Going along with the elapsed, we need a way to sort of consistently update this elapsed as time ticks on. And we're actually going to introduce one more event to listen to while we're in the playing state. We are going to introduce something called timing. And timing is a special event that it's essentially not going to change the state, so it will send it back to playing. So if we update this here, we can see that we're playing. And then the timing event, whenever it's called, it keeps it as the playing state, but this will give us the opportunity to update the context, the elapsed property, so that we can sort of show the time moving along in this video. I think this is a good point to copy this and start working on it in our own code instead. So let's go over to Visual Code, and we will paste in what we've got so far. And let me just give you a tour of this file up to this point. We're using 2 packages, XState React to be able to inject this state machine into React. We're using the XState package itself, which gives us machine, and this assign helper, which will help us update our context here. So we've got our state machine, which we've been looking at. Let's quickly look at the React component. So here we've got app, and what it does is it returns a div, and inside div we have our actual video. So it has a source pointing to this Fox video I'm showing, which was a cool project my wife actually worked on, where she used Three.js and this little prism and the leap motion to watch hand movement and generate a holographic moving fox. I should do the video about that sometime, how she made that. Very cool. So we've got our video player, and we're telling it currently to show controls. We'll eventually remove this once we've built out our own controls. Down here we've got a div which has the elapsed bar. I'm not going to go into how this was built because it's not the purpose of the video, but below that we've got our buttons. So this will be our play pause here. And then below play pause we've got our timer, which is showing 0 of 0. And that is down here, and some little helper functions I built to format the elapsed minutes and seconds of the video. So let's start to embed our state machine into the app, and then we'll build out some additional functionality we need to actually make it work. So the first thing we're going to do is embed our state machine. So whenever you embed a state machine, you're given 2 things that you can easily pluck out from this array: the current state of the world of our state, and send, the ability to send events to our state machine. So use machine, we will use the video machine here, like that. And because I want to control this video, I will also need a ref to that actual HTML video element. So const ref equals react.useRef, and that will be null at the beginning. So why don't we, at the beginning, assign this ref, so we can come down here and give it a ref like that. Let's just make sure things are still working. Okay, it looks good. And the next thing we want to do is basically listen to some events that this video player tells us, And we'll use that to relay in some information back up to our state machine that we're keeping track of here. It's not just users that can send your state machine events. It can be also sort of other callbacks you're listening to from HTML elements, etc. So the first event we're going to listen to is onCanPlay. And what this basically tells us is that the video is ready and it can be played. So when that happens, we're going to send an event up to our state machine. So we'll say send. And the event we're going to send will be, so we start off at loading, we're going to send it the loaded event. And there's some extra information I want to send along with this event, and that will be the actual ref to the video itself. So I'll send it up as video, and that would be this ref here dot current. Okay. So when the page loads, it's in initial because the initial state is loading. When the video is ready, it will send us the onCanPlay. We'll send it the loaded event and the video. So we somehow need a way to get this video from this ref here and into our context here where it's currently null. So what we can do is switch from a simple string target of the new state, and we can switch to an object like this. And once we have an object, we can use the actions. And these are essentially functions to call when this event was triggered. And you can use these functions to sort of do side effects, to update the context, to call the play function of the video, etc. So what we will do in this one is we'll use the assign function that comes with XState, and this is specifically to update properties of your context. So the two properties we're going to update are the video. So we've got our context and the event that triggered this. And our goal is to return the video property. So in event, it received the video, so we can simply return event.video, which means we don't really even need to access context here. The next one we can set is the duration of the video, which should be available to us at this point. So we can do context and event, and it will return event.video.duration, which is a property of the HTML5 video element, which will give us the duration. So at this point, once this event happens, we should have access within our state machine to the video element, and we should know the duration. So why don't we come down here and let's access our context to get the duration and the elapsed time of our video. So that will come from the current context. And now that we have this information, instead of sending in 0, which I just sort of had here as a dummy placeholder, we can actually send the elapsed that we'll be keeping track of and the duration here. So if I go back to the page, you can see now that inside of our timer here, we're viewing that it's 26 seconds long, which is the same as the real controls above. So why don't we handle what happens if for whatever reason the video can't be found and this video element has an error. So for that, we are going to listen to an on-air event that this element will call. And when that happens, we can send the, what's it called? The fail event. That's an event you don't want to receive. Like that. So if that occurred, that would kick our state machine into the failure state. And we can actually console.log the current value here to see what state we have. So you can see that it starts out as loading, and then because it's able to load correctly, it transitions into ready paused. You might find when you're doing this in Create React App that you get some weird errors about uninitialized machines. I think this is just because of the hot reloading. If you do a full refresh, you typically shouldn't get that. So here we go from loading to ready paused. Why don't we change the name of the video? And then we can see here that we go from loading into the failure state. So that's working correctly so far. So why don't we actually control starting this video with our own button? So to do that, we are going to pass down the current and the send. Current and send into this buttons component. And that will give us the ability here to determine whether we want to play or pause the video. So we need to receive current and send here. So what we'll do is we will put an if statement, and we want to basically find out, are we currently paused or are we currently playing or ended? So what we're going to check is if we're currently playing. So the way we'll do that is we will say, is the current state matched to ready playing? So if this matches, what we're going to do is we are going to return a button, and this button will say paused, or just pause, because we know that we're currently playing. So what do we want to do when the user clicks this? We want to send the pause event to our state machine. So in every other scenario, I guess we're either paused or ended. In that case, we want to send up the play event. So we'll remove this here, and we'll send up the play event. Okay. Oops. Current.match is not a function. Okay, what did I do wrong? Sorry about that. If it matches ready playing, there we go. Okay, so now that it's loading, we're showing our button and we're seeing that it's currently ready paused. So because of that, it says play. So as soon as I click this, it sends the play event to our state machine, which should start the video. But we can see that the video didn't actually start playing, even though it says that our state is ready playing right now. And that's because we have to add in some additional side effects to tell the video to start playing. So what we will do is, so we're paused. So when we get the play event, we will change this to have a target of playing, and we will add some actions. So code to run when we listen to the play event. So what we're actually going to do is pass an array of strings, and we'll tell it to call a function called play video. So where does it actually find this function play video to call? We're going to define it down here, so play video. And it's a function that will receive the context and the event, which I don't think we need. So what we can do now is we can access the video on the context. So we'll just change it to video like that. And we can tell the video to play. So this video is the HTML5 video player that we've sent up to our state machine when we passed it the loaded event. So to pass this play video function into our state machine, we can add an options object here, which has actions, and it will be an object where we pass play video up. So now when we come back here and we click play, our video actually plays. So pause, you can see it didn't actually pause the video, so we need to go handle that. So why don't we create a pause video function, which tells the video to pause. We will pass it to our state machine. And then when the pause event occurs, we will need to tell it which actions to call. So the target will be paused, and the actions will be pause video, like that. Okay, let's see if that works. We can play the video, And can we pause the video? Yes, we can. Okay. So the next thing I want to take care of is that you can see that it's playing, but this elapsed time isn't increasing. So this is where we're going to use the timing event, which doesn't really change the state at all, but we'll use that as a chance to update our context, the elapsed time. So how do we trigger the timing event? So the HTML5 player actually gives us another callback we can use, which is onTime update. And when onTime update occurs, we can send the timing event up to our state machine. Okay, so timing here. So we will say that the target is like this, and now we need to tell it what action to call. So all we really want to do here is update the elapsed time in our context. So we can use the assign just inline here, and we want to update the elapsed like this. So we get access to our video from the context, and then the event, which doesn't really matter to us. And what we want to return is the video.currentTime, which is a property available on the video. So now let's play. And now you can see that we're constantly calling the timing event, which is triggering it to update this elapsed time here. We can pause the video and it stops. And you can even see this little green line moving along on the screen. So I think there's only one event we haven't really dealt with yet. And that's, well, what happens when we reach the end of the video, and then how do we get this thing playing again? So how we're going to trigger this end event is actually by tying in to the video element again. And it is one called onEnded that is called by the HTML5 element itself. So when that occurs, we are going to send up the end event. And there isn't really anything we need to do when this occurs. We just want to sort of transition it into ended here. But when it's ended and ended receives the play event, that's when we want to do something a little bit special. So when that occurs, we want to transition it back to playing. But we also want to call an action that we'll name restart video. Because we want to basically set the video back to the beginning and then have it playing again. So we need to create a function called restart video, which will access the video from the context. And then what we'll do is we'll set the current time of the video back to the beginning, 0. And then we'll tell the video that we want it to play. So we need to take this function and pass it in to our actions, like this. And now let's see if it works. I'm just going to get it closer to the end using these controls. So we're playing, and then let's do it again. Okay, I know why. It's because when you play here, it doesn't tie into our state machine, so it's actually not. So why don't we actually say play? So it's playing, and it reaches the end, and we get the ended event. So when I click play again from ended, it needs to start it back to the beginning, which is what it does. So why don't we do the last thing, which is let's remove controls. So now the entire thing is controlled by ourselves. So we'll refresh this. We can click play. We're watching the video play. We can pause it, which stops it. We can play again, which gets it going. And if we were to wait the 26 seconds, we'll eventually get the ended event, and then we can restart this thing. So what we've done is we've built our own HTML5 player using XState to manage the sort of state and the transitions, and we did it all in React. Let's review the code that made this thing work because it was quite complicated. So if we go up to the top, we defined our state machine. And if we refer back to the visualizer, we had 3 top-level states, so loading, ready, and failure. And then within ready, we had 3 child states, that the video was paused, playing, or ended. And each of these states had a number of events that it was listening for. And so loading was listening for when it was loaded correctly or it failed. Paused was listening for it to be played. Playing had a number of things it was listening to, that it was paused, that it reached the end of the video, or if we just wanted to simply update the elapsed time in our context. And then play basically gave us the ability to restart the video by calling play again. So if we go back to our code, we defined all of these states, and sort of whenever you define a state, you tell it what to do when you receive any of these events using the on property. And typically what we've done here is we've told it what should the new state be, what's the target, and what are some effects that should be run, functions that should be run to either control our video player or to simply update, such as the case here, the values inside of our context. In terms of these functions, play video, pause video, and restart video, we passed them in as strings. In this case, we wouldn't have needed to do we would need the string, but we wouldn't have needed an array because there's only one. But we needed a way to basically inject these functions into our state machine. So what we did is we defined them down here, play video, pause video, and restart video. And when we used the useMachine hook, we passed in these actions, these functions into our state machine. And that allowed us to fully control this video player using React along with our XState state machine. This is a little bit complicated, but we built a complicated thing. You can see how many different states and how do we know what transitions to which. Can you imagine how difficult it would have been to keep track of all of that using different Booleans everywhere? Is it loaded, true or false? Is it a failure, true or false? Is it currently playing, true or false? Paused, end. What's the time? It would have been a ton of different state variables that we would have had to keep track of and hard to know how to transition from one to the next. It's a perfect place to use XState. Hope you enjoyed the video. Take care. Bye.